So, Chapter 28 of Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex is officially out, and it is one of the most action-packed chapters we've gotten from Boruto, well, in months. Boruto got a new sword, Inujin got a new jutsu, and Konoha got a new enemy. And yet, I believe one of the most important things that happened in Chapter 28 is being massively slept on. Because in Chapter 28, in an incredibly low-key kind of way, the biggest glaring weakness of the Shinju was revealed. And because of how that glaring weakness was revealed, a lot of people missed it. But what is this weakness? Will Konoha be able to exploit it? How will this weakness affect the remainder of the story? And if this weakness is exploited, will the Shinju be defeated once and for all? Well, today we're going to be answering all those questions and a whole lot more, because today we're talking the Shinju's biggest weakness exposed. But before we get to exposing anything like a Minecraft YouTuber on Discord, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. That joke works two ways. And if you guys are looking for 47 additional NC Hammer 23 videos, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We are on to Rock Lee versus Gaara. But before we get into all that, we gotta talk about the sponsor of today's video, ZocDoc. Guys, it's 2025, and the days of only going to the doctors during emergencies are over. No more walking it off for 6 months that never works. No more, oh, these headaches will go away eventually. And definitely no more, that stinging stomach pain I get every couple of days is probably just because I ate something bad. It's time to take our health seriously and get things checked out when we need to. And ZocDoc makes it easier than ever by helping you find the right doctor and quickly. See, ZocDoc makes it incredibly easy to start your health plan by helping you find and book doctors that are right for you in your area. See, ZocDoc is not only a free website and app, but also allows for you to search and vet in-network doctors that are close to your vicinity, and click on those doctors to instantly book an appointment. And with the over 100,000 in-network doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary to urgent care, ZocDoc has got you covered. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, are well suited for the medical needs you have, and have good ratings. You can also filter based off specific preferences. Want a male doctor who speaks a specific language, who has time slots of availability in accordance with your busy lifestyle? You can filter for that. And appointments made on ZocDoc happen fast, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. And more often than not, you can get same-day appointments. Listen, recently after raising an entire litter of puppies, I tweaked my right bicep, and I tried to tell myself, I'll stretch it, I'll ice it, it'll be fine, but it wasn't fine. So I popped on ZocDoc and I looked for physical therapists nearby, and I was connected with somebody who was perfect for the needs that I had. They gave me exercises, stretching routines, and icing schedules to get my arm back up to 100% strength. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/NCHammer to find and instantly book a doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/NCHammer to start your health journey today. Now I know what some of you are gonna say. Nick, we already know the glaring weakness of the Shinju. It's their soul thorn, right? And well, yeah, kind of. Of course, the soul thorn is a weakness of the Shinju, as conceivably the Shinju are able to regenerate infinitely until their soul thorn is either destroyed or injected back into the tree that was grown around the person that made the Shinju in the first place. The soul thorn is less the weakness of the Shinju and more the core of the Shinju. Yes, it's the only way to destroy the Shinju, but only because the entirety of the Shinju's memories, experiences, and abilities are tied to the soul thorn. But that would be like saying the brain is the weakness of the human body. And well, obviously, yes, if you get shot in the brain, that's not so good for you. I'd argue that there's way more glaring weaknesses to the human body, like our neck. And while every single Shinju does have a weakness that's specific to them, Jura is beginning to feel human emotions, and therefore an emotional plea might be able to be made towards him. Hidari can't use the Chidori on account of the fact that he only has the Rinnegan and not the Sharingan. And Mamushi, while he is able to split himself infinitely into clones that are equally as powerful as his main body, loses IQ points for every single time he splits himself. However, Chapter 28 seemingly displayed a weakness that not only applies to individual Shinju, but all of them at the same time. See, because in Chapter 28, when Kashin Koji was talking with Inujin about the 10 paths, possible futures, and about why Kashin Koji doesn't tell random people about the predictions that he sees, we were shown a couple of panels of the future that Kashin Koji saw that allowed for him to describe a jutsu that Inujin learned in a far-off, apocalyptian-esque future. And in these few panels, we saw not only had Ada been turned into a malformed divine tree, or yes, grown into a malformed divine tree, but also that Himawari Himawari had been killed, and that her lifeless corpse laid in the arms of a sobbing Inujin. And thus the reason that Kashin Koji peered into this future was so he could teach Inujin the upgrade to mind transmission jutsu that Inujin created in this far-off future in order to enact revenge against Jura. But if you think about either of these results, either Ada having a malformed divine tree go around her, or Himawari dying, neither of them make a whole lot of sense. Let's start with Himawari. The concept of her being killed makes no sense, because after all, Jura wants to consume her. See, well, yes, originally Jura wanted to consume Naruto. The chakra signature he followed into Konoha, believing it to be Naruto's, actually turned up to be Himawari's. And thus it's revealed, essentially, that Jura was less interested in the concept of consuming Naruto and more interested in the concept of consuming Kurama, because Naruto is no longer the wielder of Kurama's chakra. That honor had been passed down to Himawari. Now, Himawari didn't know that until Jura pulled up on her looking for Kurama's chakra, but still, this was the moment that showed us that Himawari was now the next generation Jinchuriki of Kurama. And Jura wanting to consume Kurama makes a fair amount of sense when you consider the fact that he's most likely the Ten Tails. I don't know why I said most likely, it's been confirmed like 3 times already. And therefore, obviously, the primal desire of a juvenile and sliced down multiple times in size Ten Tails would be to consume Kurama, who represents more than 50% of the energy of a previously full-grown Ten Tails. As if this Ten Tails that was later turned into Jura was to be able to consume Kurama's chakra, it would not only be able to achieve its previous strength, but also probably surpass it. And thus, as Himawari holds on to what is presumably the entirety of Kurama's chakra now, she has become the priority target for Jura. But Jura doesn't want to kill Himawari. He, like all other Shinju, wants to consume the person his heart says he's most obsessed with. And considering the fact that it was literally his idea to get all the other Shinju to do this, I would say that Jura, more than any of the other Shinju, has no motivation to kill the person he's trying to consume. And while, yes, some of you are probably saying, oh, but Nick, he could consume her after she died, in the future that we're shown by Kashin Koji doesn't seem as though Jura's trying to do that, because Inujin has the time to pick up Himawari's dead body and cry while he holds her, and B, doesn't make a whole lot of sense on account of the fact that if Jura or any of the other Shinju were to kill Himawari, all of the chakra of Kurama would disperse from her body. And after dispersing from her body, Kurama's chakra would take years to reform in either somebody like Boruto or just out in the wild as Kurama. And while there really is no way for the Shinju to know that killing a Jinchuriki will simply blast their chakra out into the atmosphere, it's still relatively safe to assume that none of the Shinju would make this choice, especially when you consider the fact that there's a fair to decent chance that if Himawari lost all of Kurama's chakra, Kurama would reform inside of Boruto, making him even more ridiculously powerful. However, there is technically the possibility that Jura, as a dual Rinnegan wielder, mind you, has access to the outer path abilities. And while, yes, we've never seen Jura use any of the 6 paths of the Rinnegan, as we've only ever really seen him use his Rinnegan to either launch claw marks or tailed beast bombs, there's really no reason for us to believe, as a dual Rinnegan wielder, that Jura doesn't have access to the 6 paths. And therefore, if Jura did have access to the 6 paths and the outer path, he, like Madara in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, could rip Kurama out of his Jinchuriki, which would maybe kill Himawari. Now I say maybe because the relationship between Himawari and Kurama is unlike any Jinchuriki relationship we've ever seen, and the reason that Kurama settled inside of Himawari after his death using Baryon mode is most likely because in some kind of metaphysical way, Kurama is inside of Himawari's DNA. So like maybe if Kurama was ripped out of her, there'd still be enough Kurama inside of her to keep her alive, kind of like how in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, Killer B was able to stay alive after Madara ripped Gyuki out of him by leaving a tentacle of Gyuki inside of him. But like I said earlier, we've never seen Jura use any of the 6 paths or the outer path of the Rinnegan. And the outer path of the Rinnegan is kind of connected to the idea of being able to control the Ghetto statue, and the Ghetto statue is just a husk of the Ten Tails. So why would Jura, who is a Ten Tails, have any need to access the outer path? Now this does lend to a possible argument that Jura doesn't even need access to the outer path to be able to rip a tailed beast out of a Jinchuriki, because seemingly that's an ability tied to either the Ghetto statue or just Ten Tails in general. But for the moment, we can't say, as nothing along these lines has ever really happened. But some of you might be wondering to yourselves, but Nick, maybe Jura isn't the one who kills Himawari. And I mean, well, yeah, that is a possibility. Himawari could die in combat against Mamushi. I highly doubt that anybody not named Jura is going to be responsible for Himawari's death. See, Kashin Koji was able to bank on the fact that Mamushi literally wouldn't destroy any part of Konoha because of how afraid he was of Jura. Regardless of how stupid Mamushi gets, there is something apparently deep inside of him that drives more than anything his fear for Jura. And therefore, regardless of how many times Mamushi splits, Team Boruto doesn't have to worry about Mamushi destroying any part of Konoha. And the sentiment is literally verified by Mamushi in chapter 28, when two Mamushai are talking to each other, and one of them says, well, you can kill those guys who are from Konoha, don't destroy any of the buildings. We don't want to piss off Jura. And if Mamushi is so afraid of Jura that he is unwilling to destroy local pizza shops in Konoha, it's safe to assume that even the dumbest versions of Mamushi wouldn't kill the person that Jura wants to consume. Also, the whole reason that Kashin Koji peered into that specific future was because in that future, Inujin manufactured an upgrade to the mind transmission jutsu, specifically to enact revenge on Jura, not Mamushi. And while the jutsu is being used against Mamushi and is probably more useful in combat against Mamushi than Jura, it is specifically stated that Inujin makes the jutsu to enact revenge on Jura. So it's pretty much undoubtable that the person who ends up killing Himawari is Jura. But why and how does Jura kill Himawari? Well, the answer to that question may actually lie with Ada's fate in this far-off dystopian future. See, because in these few panels from this hopefully alternative future, outside of Himawari's corpse being grasped by Inujin, we see Ada locked up in a malformed divine tree, like Moegi, Shinki, Sasuke, Bug. But this also doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why would Mamushi, who wants to eat Ada in order to understand what love is, allow for her to be bitten by a claw grime? Is it because he wants to turn her into a Shinju so the two of them can live together? Well, maybe, but Mamushi has very often talked about wanting to consume Ada, and I highly doubt he has the intelligence to make some kind of Bride of Frankenstein long play. So what exactly happened here? Well, I think what happened is exactly what Mamushi wanted. He consumed Ada, but the end result of that consumption was turning into a tree. See, one of the largest talking points revolving around the Shinju is the battle between the id and the ego. The id of the Shinju demands they consume an Otsutsuki and turn into a complete divine tree, but the ego of the Shinju yearns for a creation of the superego. For those of you who aren't familiar with id, ego, and superego, it's basically a very old, widely accepted breakdown of human psychology. Your brain, or your thoughts, are broken down into three categories: id, ego, and superego. Id controls things like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I want to reproduce. If we only had id, all we would do is sleep, eat, fart, and fornicate, and we wouldn't care how we accomplished any of those goals. However, ego stops us from doing things like walking into a grocery store and biting every single apple that we think looks good. And superego describes to us why that would be bad. So id are our primal desires. Ego is what tells us how to indulge in said primal desires, and superego explains to us why we indulge in those primal desires in the way that we do. Got it? Good. See, the Shinju understand that consuming an Otsutsuki, or maybe just consuming anyone, will lead to the end of their sentient life. Which is why when Boruto comes face to face with them for the first time, they let him get away. Because the Shinju want time to figure out who and what they are. And giving in to their urges and consuming Boruto right then and right there would strip them of that possibility. But seemingly what we were shown in this possibly alternative dystopian future is that the end of sentient life for the Shinju doesn't just come when they sink their teeth into an Otsutsuki, but rather when they sink their teeth into anyone. See, ironically, while the Shinju believe that consuming the person that their heart is set on the most will lead them to enlightenment, it seems as though that enlightenment will come in the form of them turning into the thing that they're specifically trying to avoid turning into. And that would be incredible writing. Not just because it gets rid of the Shinju and introduces a couple of key character deaths, but because it would be incredible commentary on the human experience. See, the Shinju are all still children. They thirst for knowledge. They ask questions. They're easily manipulated. They're trying to figure out concepts like love, loss, sorrow, and hatred, and they're doing it all with an insane amount of power at their fingertips. But while on this quest for information, they come to the conclusion that consuming the person that they used to be loved more than anything will lead them to enlightenment is in actuality a conclusion that's more primal than it is refined. See, because while they believe that the indulging of this id-like desire will unlock their superego and lead them to enlightenment, in actuality will lock them into their fate of becoming a divine tree, and ironically, into an incomplete divine tree in the case of Jura, Hidari, and Mamushi. See, because the Shinju believe that in order to become the superior race of beings that they believe themselves to be, they have to indulge in their animalistic traits. They need to strip away the superego of humanity that limits what they're able to accomplish in order to access the entirety of their primal strength. But this is hypocritical when you consider the fact that they're also simultaneously trying to achieve enlightenment, and thus by indulging in this primal and animalistic urge to consume, not slowed by the concepts of ego or superego, two things that would tell them that consuming these people is the wrong thing to do, the Shinju will be forced into a fate they've wanted to avoid. See, because what allows for humans to change their fate, and the changing of fate has been a persistent talking point throughout Two Blue Vortex, is their will to push back their primal urges and their caveman-esque needs, and consider all their options, their desires, and the feelings of those around them. And as Mamushi is the most animalistic out of all of the Shinju remaining, it would make sense that he would be the one caught in the cycle of this fate. Now, he would technically achieve his goal of consuming Ada, and he would, in some sense, be with her for the rest of time, but doing so would come at the cost of his consciousness, and therefore the achievement of his goal would actually counteract the goal itself, because he wouldn't be sentient enough to enjoy it. This would also explain why Himawari does not share Ada's fate, because Jura, after seeing Mamushi turned into a tree after accomplishing what he told him to accomplish, Jura would understand this quandary. He would understand that the fulfillment of his goal in the way that he believes appropriate would lead to his demise, and thus Jura would consider his options, and thus rather indulging in the bestial urge to consume Himawari whole, he would, in his true moment of enlightenment, use the tools around him, or in him, to strip Kurama out of Himawari, as after all, that is what he's after, and taking Kurama does not require consuming Himawari. In fact, consuming Himawari might be counteractive to the idea of gaining Kurama's chakra, because in the process of being consumed, she would surely die, and Kurama's chakra would go elsewhere. And thus, if Jura was to go about extracting Kurama from Himawari, this would not only kill Himawari, but also give Jura a massive upgrade in strength, putting him one step closer to becoming a true and full Ten Tails. And thus, what's the glaring weakness of every single Shinju? Well, their very mission, because the completion of their mission would eliminate them from the world. And therefore, if Konoha were to fork over Himawari, Sarada, and Ada, I'm just now realizing all of those are women. There's actually something to be said there. Maybe like a small meta commentary on how love can be forced on women in a bunch of different ways, even if they don't ask for it. Anyways, if hypothetically Konoha were to sacrifice its 3 most powerful women, the Shinju threat would be eliminated immediately. And as none of them are Otsutsuki, none of them would turn into real divine trees, and that'd be the end of that. And now, well, obviously, that isn't going to happen. And honestly, we may never know if I'm correct here on account of the fact that we are actively trying to avoid a future where this very theory is proven correct. I'm hoping that the story finds some way to prove me right. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that the accomplishment of the Shinju's goal will turn them into nothing more than the claw grind that they started from? Or do you believe I'm way off the mark? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, it looks like it's gonna rain in LA, so I have about 20 more minutes to walk my dogs.